All right, let's talk about Spain. We're going to dive into the story of a nation that has, well, basically died and been reborn more times than you can count. We're going to condense thousands of years of conquest, culture, empire, and crisis into one powerful story of constant reinvention. So think about this for a second. How does a single nation manage to build the world's first truly global empire, lose absolutely everything, and then come back stronger? It's a heck of a question, right? And this story, it's so much more than just kings and battles. It's this incredible, dramatic cycle of rise, fall, and rebirth that has literally shaped the world we live in. Let's get into it. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to tackle this in 6 key chapters. We'll start at the very beginning with ancient empires, then jump into the epic struggle of Al-Andalus and the Reconquista, see how Spain became a global superpower, chart its centuries of turmoil, cover the Franco years and the transition to democracy, and finally look at Spain's place in modern Europe. First up, we've got to go way, way back. Before there was a Spain, the Iberian Peninsula was this incredible melting pot, a crossroads of cultures. Its foundations were first laid by the Romans, and then later by the Germanic tribes who moved in after them. And this is where it gets really interesting, because you can see the first layers of Spanish identity starting to form. The Romans gave the place its name, Hispania, and they built the whole foundation: the roads, the cities, the laws, the Latin language. But here's the twist. After Rome fell, the Visigoths took over, but they didn't just tear everything down. Nope. They actually blended in, adopting Roman culture and adding their own spin to it. This created the bedrock for everything that was to come. Now we get to what is, without a doubt, the single most defining conflict in all of medieval Spanish history. In the year 711, a new power swept in from North Africa, kicking off an 800-year saga. That's right, 800 years of Muslim rule and Christian reconquest that would forge the very soul of the nation. And this really lays it out perfectly. You had 2 completely different worlds living side by side and clashing for centuries. On one side, you've got Al-Andalus, an incredible hub of Islamic civilization, a place of amazing advancements in science and art. And on the other, the Reconquista, this slow, grinding, generation-spanning campaign by Christian kingdoms in the north to take back the land. This push and pull is the heart of the story. And wow, this timeline really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? We are talking about nearly 800 years. That's more than 30 generations of people born into this world of shifting frontiers. It wasn't one constant war, you know? It was the slow burn process with huge turning points, like the massive Christian victory in 1212 that totally shifted the balance. And then, finally, the fall of Granada in 1492, which brought the whole thing to an end. And that final date, 1492, is the perfect pivot to our next chapter. Because once the Reconquista was complete, a unified Spain didn't just sit back and relax. Oh no, it launched itself onto the world stage, and that single year, 1492, became one of the most important moments in the history of the world. So, the year 1492, if there was ever a single year that completely changed a nation's destiny, this is it. It's not just a date on a calendar. It's this massive, explosive inflection point where one era ended and a totally new one began. I mean, think about this. 3 absolutely monumental things happen all at once. 1, the centuries-long Reconquista is finally over, done. 2, Columbus, funded by Spain, bumps into the Americas, and suddenly a vast new empire is possible. And 3, the Alhambra Decree orders the expulsion of Spain's Jews, which fundamentally changed the identity of the nation. These 3 events lit the fuse for everything that came next. And what came next was, well, nothing short of spectacular. Fueled by an absolute flood of silver from the Americas, Spain entered its Siglo de Oro, its golden age. This wasn't just about funding armies. This wealth sponsored an explosion of art and culture. Spain, under the Habsburgs, became the undisputed superpower of Europe, both militarily and culturally. I mean, this period was just dazzling. You've got the royal palace of El Escorial becoming a magnet for Europe's greatest artists. You've got painters like Velázquez defining a whole new style. And of course, you've got the birth of the modern novel, with Cervantes and his masterpiece, Don Quixote. Spain wasn't just powerful, it was the cultural center of the world. But as these stories often go, the Golden Age couldn't last forever. In fact, the very wealth that built the empire also sowed the seeds of its decline. The story now takes a dark turn, shifting from global dominance to a long, painful period of crisis, internal fighting, and eventually a civil war that would rip the country in 2. And the 19th century was just relentless. It was one body blow after another. First, Napoleon invades and just wrecks the place. Then, almost overnight, its American empire is gone. After that, they spend decades fighting themselves in these brutal Carlist civil wars. And the knockout punch? 1898, a humiliating defeat in the Spanish-American War. That was it. The empire was officially over. All of this pressure, this chaos and division, it had to explode eventually. And in 1936, it did. The Spanish Civil War. And this wasn't just some local conflict. This was an ideological battlefield for the entire world, a horrifying dress rehearsal for World War II that turned Spaniard against Spaniard. And the human cost, it's just staggering. Around 500,000 people lost their lives. When the dust finally settled in 1939, the nationalist forces, led by General Francisco Franco, had won, and he would go on to rule Spain for nearly 40 years. And that brings us to the Franco era. It was a stark, authoritarian period where Spain was basically cut off from the rest of Europe. But after his death, the country pulled off one of the most remarkable reinventions in modern history. For almost 40 years, it was like the country was frozen in time. Under Franco's dictatorship, there was no political opposition. Culture was tightly controlled, and Spain was completely isolated from the democratic boom happening all over post-war Europe. It was a long, repressive period that left a really deep mark. But then, something absolutely incredible happened. Franco dies in 75, and his handpicked successor, King Juan Carlos I, does the exact opposite of what everyone expected. Instead of continuing the dictatorship, he dismantled it, and it happened at lightning speed. Within just a few years, Spain had a new constitution, and by 1982, a freely elected socialist government. It was a stunningly peaceful and rapid pivot to democracy. And that amazing, peaceful transition flung the doors wide open for Spain to finally rejoin the continent and take its place in the modern world after decades of being on the outside looking in. And they didn't waste any time. In '86, they joined what's now the EU, a huge deal. Then you have the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, which was basically Spain's big coming out party to the world, a message that said, hey, we're back. Adopting the euro cemented their place in Europe. And yeah, the 2008 financial crisis hit them hard, really hard. But the way they recovered just proved, once again, how incredibly resilient this new Spain had become. So when you step back and look at the whole story, a Roman province, a global empire, a painful decline, a dark dictatorship, and then this stunning democratic rebirth, what's the one constant theme? Reinvention. It's like Spain's national superpower. This incredible capacity for total transformation, which, of course, leaves us with the big question, right? What will its next chapter be?